It's never enough.
Right.
If our pride is, if our sense of worth is, I think they're pretty closely associated, rooted in what I can do, it's never enough. Welcome to the ReThink podcast.
Yeah. So St. George.
Brought to you by St. George.
I want to get that tattoo. Like,
I think we ought to do it live on the podcast.
I'd be amazed. My wife would freak out, but it would be. It is
That
the
would be
tattoo I
fun to
want.
see.
That would be.
So
Not the
it's-
tattoo, your wife freaking out, because I just can't imagine Mandy ever getting.
She'd be
that wound
furious.
up.
That's why I don't have any tattoos. That's hot
The
button
only
for her.
reason?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Otherwise, I'd have tattoos everywhere.
Would you do a sleeve? Would you like to have a sleeve?
Yes.
My favorite
For
is,
sure.
is the. Never mind.
So I'm a huge fan
words
of
matter.
tattoos. Yeah.
Words
Go ahead,
matter.
St. George.
St. George. All right. So he wasn't a saint necessarily whenever he was living. Real dude. He was a colonel.
It was just George?
Just George. He was curious too. Living living his best life as a colonel in the Roman army in the 300s, right? He becomes a Christian.
So wait a minute.
That's a whole
Colonel, Roman Army,
Yep.
300s. His name is George?
best life ever.
His name's
I-
George.
I-
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that.
He's a real dude. You can
I'm going to Google it.
Wikipedia it.
Is that still safe
It's
to
for
say?
real. So anyway, he's in charge of
How dare you?
this whole regiment of Roman soldiers in North Africa, right? And now here's where the story gets a little. Is it legend? Is it real? There's probably a little mixture of both, right?
I heard if you say it 3 times with confidence, it becomes
It's
real.
true. So the story goes that he was going through this town in North Africa where the Roman army was, and he's checking on everything, and he had heard about this dragon that was plaguing this town, and this dragon had taken up residence in a pond in this town. And it became such a nuisance that the townspeople started sacrificing their livestock to this dragon in order to appease it. And
Like bringing it food?
yeah, to try to get the dragon to stop, terrorizing the town. And it got so bad that that didn't work. So they decided they were going to offer human sacrifice to this dragon. And it came up to the chief's daughter to be sacrificed. And George is like, he finds out about it. He hears about it. And he's like, this is ridiculous. So he gets on his horse with a spear and he goes out and he wounds it.
Just wounds it.
He wounds it, ties it up, has his him and his guys go out there. He spears it, wounds it enough to bring it back to the center of town, and he publicly kills the dragon in the middle of town. And then he preaches the gospel because he's a Christian. 15,000 people come to believe in Jesus as a result of it. And as a result of this whole area turning to Christ, it caught the Roman government's attention. And it's right at the time when Diocletian?
300?
Yeah. Starts persecuting Christians. And
Diocletian?
yeah, there you go. Gets on the radar. And anyway, St. George is ultimately executed by the Roman government as a result of all these people coming to Christ and getting on the radar because he's promoting something other than the emperor. And so the picture of him on his horse spearing the dragon, a lot of people think it was a crocodile because it's in North Africa near the Nile River. But the idea that he preached was that you kill these things before they get unmanageable. And so he talked about sin in our
Don't
life.
feed them. They just get bigger.
That's exactly right. You don't keep feeding the thing. You have to kill it. And he talked about that in regards to sin. And I use that illustration as pride because it's slaying one of the dragons of pride. We don't feed our pride. We have to kill it. We have to starve it and put it to death before it gets out of control.
That's
there you
what I was kind of trying to do that for Matt there a little while ago.
Yeah. Just kill it.
Killing his pride before it got out of control.
Yep.
It
That was
worked.
good. You were setting him up for success.
Thanks for discipling me, Jeff.
So Proverbs 11:2, it says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom.
Wow. So in where is it? It's in Bethlehem, right?
Yeah.
Church of the Nativity.
It's major piece of artwork there.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, you talked about this.
there's a statue there. Yeah, I don't know how old that particular one is, but it's that same thing I just saw in the imagery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's on the Catholic chapel side of the birthplace.
Yep.
So, side note to St. George and the Dragon, the word dinosaur,
Mm-hmm.
which means terrible lizard, was actually coined it's a new word in 1841. 1841, so dinosaur. So there is a lot of teaching. Answers in Genesis, Ken Ham will say that was in the Bible. You see dragons quite a bit,
Mhm.
and in ancient literature, even to like the 800s, 1000,
Right.
there are accounts of battles with dragons,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some of them I think are a little embellished, the fire breathing and all that business, but there's a lot of biblical worldview folks that would say those were actually dinosaurs. Smaller probably than some of the larger ones that existed prior, but they were post-flood dinosaurs. They called them dragons, and St. George killed one. But the key to this story is defeat it while it's small.
Yep.
Don't
Yep.
let it grow pride.
Don't keep feeding it.
So I guess what are you going to say, or have you said? You're preach this in Clay, and then you're preaching it this weekend in Effingham.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
What do you mean? How you don't?
How do you slay the dragon?
Well, Solomon tells us here in Proverbs, humility comes wisdom.
But where do you get humility? Because for some people it's natural, but for some people it's a struggle.
I think Jesus actually deals with it. I use Luke 18 as the rich young ruler and Jesus' encounter, because this dude's like, he's saying, look at all the things I've done, right? I've kept all the rules. I've raised my own status. I'm wealthy, which is a status symbol. I got my life together, and everyone around him probably assumed the same thing. And Jesus says, okay, so take your identity, sacrifice it. So go die to yourself, your wealth, and then come follow me. And I think that's the real piece to this. And we know this. People are hanging on to their high school glory days, right? That's their identity.
Uncle Rico.
Yeah, it's like this is where our self-worth comes from, our accomplishments that we did when we were 18 years old. And if that's where our identity is, Jesus is saying, no, put that to death. Like, I have something way better for you. And that's what he's offering.
So I think that's really, really, really important here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not saying that I'm worthless. It's actually just totally opposite of that.
Yeah, you're
I'm
worth
a child,
more.
I'm a child of the Almighty King,
Yeah.
a special creation of God. That's the context for my pride.
Mm-hmm.
It's based upon in realities of biblical truth, not because I think this concept of defeating your pride flies in the face of the modern build 'em up self-esteem movement.
Yep. So
I think. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in the message, I talk about pride looks at the achievements that I'm able to do. Humility looks at the achievements that God has accomplished on my behalf. And there's a big difference there.
Oh.
I think all these topics actually come down to something deeper. They're all a reflection of our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And like Jesus talks about this, like out of the overflow, mouth speaks of the mouth speaks of what the heart is overflowing.
Mm-hmm.
Not that exact wording, but that's the whole idea is what's in here is revealed by your words and your actions. And so ultimately, greed, anger, lust, all the topics we're going to gossip, all of them will come down to our heart. What we're putting in eventually comes out.
And our heart has to be rooted in the identity that we have in Christ Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the key to all of this stuff. It's,
Yeah.
we've got to find who we are in Christ. I've been thinking about it because I finally get to preach again here when we talk about lust.
They're going to let you back on the stage?
You're going to let yourself back on the stage?
We talk about lust, and of course we think of it. And we got to talk about this next week, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you
So
can't.
go ahead.
Just hold back.
Nope.
Nah. Just
So
let it go.
we're going to talk about lust. Let's leave it at that.
Okay. So pride, you asked, how do you put that to death? I should have brought my notes up here, but
You've
first,
preached this twice already.
yeah, I know. I just want to make sure I get it right because I don't want to be, like Matt and not get something correct.
I 100% agree with you.
So one of the things Peter's talking about, 1 Peter 5, right? He talks about casting our cares. It is 1 Peter 5, right? Casting your cares on Christ. Oh, I have to look it up now. I'm so scared I'm going to get this wrong. Yeah.
You are prone to failure. You should be.
1 Peter 5:7. I know, right?
I'm just doing the Lord's work here.
Cast all
just tearing them down.
cast.
Hallelujah.
I'm not even listening to you. What?
You're not even listening. That's
Who
right.
are you? 1 Peter 5:7. Here we go. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. So, in humility, and it starts out in verse 6, humble yourselves, right? And so it's a command that he's calling all believers to do. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand. So you're looking to God, not yourself, so that he may exalt you or lift you up at the due time. So in his timing, not our timing, not our plans, his plans. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And what pride does is it always says that you have to do more, you have to be faster, you have to be better, and you are always working to try to maintain that level of expectation. A lot of times it's ourselves, right? And it says actually, like, lay that down because God cares for you and he doesn't want you to be crushed by your own pride. He'll carry it.
Every time you are prideful, whatever the situation, what you're doing is you're lifting yourself up and you are putting other people down.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to Genesis 3 in the garden. Like, Satan is telling Eve, like, you deserve to know good and evil. You can be just like God. Like, he is revealing what she has in her heart. He's escalating the situation. He's making her prideful in the midst of, this temptation to eat the fruit. And that's what pride does. It tries to put you on the same level or higher than God.
So have you ever been prideful in just your work ethic? Like try to pick up something too heavy, carry something too far, anything like that?
Nope.
Not
Okay, so I'm the only one that struggles with that?
not when I'm working out. I just know.
Yeah, like working out, you're never around dudes and you're like, I can put a little more weight on there.
Nah.
Okay.
You ever listen to someone?
I struggle with this one a lot.
You ever listen to someone and
Here
go,
first.
I could have done that better than that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Why didn't they ask me to do that?
Uh-huh. It's the same concept. But, like, okay.
I've never had any opportunity to find pride in physical strength, though. I'm sorry. It's just there's been no grounds for ever thinking anything positive there.
I work out at a gym with a bunch of old people, so like the average age in there is 70. So
I once ran a 450 mile, though.
Okay, well,
I weighed
I've hurt
100
myself picking up things that
weighed
I should not
139
pick
pounds.
up. That's what I'm saying. Is so that's the thing. Is
Oh,
pride
I've
leads
done
us?
that,
Yeah,
but it wasn't heavy.
But it says it'll be fine. I can do this.
Yeah.
And that's you end up broken or hurt, or you hurt someone else because of your pride.
It's never enough.
Right.
If our pride is, if our sense of worth is, I think they're pretty closely associated, rooted in what I can do, it's never enough.
So here's one thing, because I got a little bit of feedback on this, and I think it's good feedback. So how do we take pride in our work? Like, we should do our jobs with excellence, and I think it's good to value that work. And I would say here's the difference between taking pride in your work and like in a good way versus a bad way. If you can look at your work and go, I've given God glory in what I've done. Like, I've used my time to honor God and I've not wasted it. I've done the best I can do. And here's the work that I've produced, and produces good fruit, awesome. The danger in that is going, that's my identity in my work. I'm known, I'm valued, I'm, accomplished because of my work. That's a misplaced pride. It's not, pride is not necessarily a bad thing in the sense that as long as it doesn't become your identity.
Yeah, I've worked harder. I've done more. I've,
Right.
And like I said a while ago, it keeps coming back to what's our heart in this? Whose glory are we seeking?
Whose kingdom are we building?
Yep, that's
Who
exactly
sits on
right.
the throne of our heart? I think practically one of the things that you can do if this is an issue for you, or if it's not, because I think it's an issue for all of us in some level or another, is you can surround yourself with people who you let in
That bring you down like Jeff.
that call you out.
Doing the Lord's work.
I think from a like ministry perspective that we're all in, like one of the greatest temptations that I think the enemy tries to come after you at is make you think that you are good enough or you are qualified or you can do this, and that's him trying to get in and distract you and to tempt you and to put your identity and hope in something else. And so when you surround yourself with Christ followers who you let call you on your issue, hey, we see this in your rearview mirror, we see this coming ahead, like you need to be careful. That's a really practical thing that you can do. That's why I think groups are so important. Not that you want to sit around in a group with a bunch of different people and talk about your pride issue, but there needs to be somebody in your life who can go, hey, like, because I care about you, I see this.
Are you good with talking about this new group that you're going to be a part of?
Somewhat.
Generalities. Yeah.
Is that the name of the group?
This new group.
New group.
No, generalities.
That Matt was asked to be a part of a group of people who are waiting on the senior minister to get out of the way. So
What?
the sake of, is that what it is about?
It's a
Definitely not.
No. It's
is it a transitioning group? Is that
yeah?
what-
Oh, you're talking about
Preacher
another group.
transitions.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I thought you were talking about another group.
No, I ain't talking about your life group.
Okay.
We don't do that.
So, yeah, succession plans.
Succession.
Listen,
plan.
our group is the only group we talk about. All right.
Well, they're cult.
Just shout out to the
It
group.
just makes them draw closer to you.
The more you put them down,
Best
the
group
more
in
they
the
come
world.
back for more.
The succession plan group.
Yeah.
I would suppose that's one of the things you guys ought to talk about.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, your pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, and fighting that battle of I want that position, I'm ready for it now, or look at me. I don't know. There's this because you're planning for the future.
Yeah. Like the first time we're getting together, we're talking about how to be faithful in the moment and the season that God has you in right now. Not getting so focused of what is ahead that you blow up your life right now. And there's a lot of different steps that we have to take in order to be a part of this. So, we've got to fill out this, I think it's like a 90-minute personality test. And then you spend another 90 minutes with a counselor at some.
You should let Jeff and I fill out your personality.
I should just send you guys the link. But the whole idea is to do this, and this is what you're getting to, I think, is blind spots that you don't necessarily see coming. And that's the really cool thing I think about following the Lord and Him refining you, is if you can look at your life and go, I was this way 10 years ago, and this is where the Lord has brought me, and other people that have been in my life have brought me here. Like when you can see growth, God's working. And that doesn't mean you're never going to be perfect, right? We're not talking about perfection. We're really talking about surrender, which is what we have to do every day, especially when it comes to this topic of pride.
Yeah. Go sell your stuff and follow
I think
me.
the rich young ruler's biggest challenge is not selling his stuff. Because reading the story, I get the perception, he would have just earned it back.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That wasn't
Right.
the problem.
Well, no, the follow the Jesus is the problem.
Yep.
Which means that, take up my cross daily. And so this isn't your focus. This isn't your identity. This isn't you. You're following me and building my kingdom and functioning for my glory, says Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue.
Yep.
Right? He struggled with the same thing Eve struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I want to be in charge myself.
Believing our way is better than God's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that this is a thing that, like I said, we all struggle with, and we all need to be aware of it and just stop pretending like we don't have a problem with it.
I think Paul does a really good job because he goes through that list of like all of his accomplishments, right? And then he says, but I count them all rubbish, trash. Some scholars would even say that's a very dramatic word, but it's this idea that compared to the richness of a relationship in Christ, all of the things that we could possibly accomplish in this world are still trash compared to a relationship with God.
My righteousness is but filthy rags.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
If it's me.
Yep. Because ourselves, we are limited to what can be done, and in God's plan and following Him, it's unlimited.
But to your point earlier, like when God is using you for a significant thing and He's working in your life, and someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, good job," and your first reaction is to cut yourself down or like, don't do that. That's not humility.
Right.
Which is, I'll just be honest with you on the ReThink podcast. That's my tendency, is to, if someone says, "Hey, good job" with something, I immediately cut myself down. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not bringing God glory. Mm-hmm. That's actually rooted in identity. Mm-hmm. And I hate that about myself, but it's just, that's constantly something I'm working on.
My wife keeps correcting me on that.
Yeah.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't want it to be about you. Right?
Yeah.
What's a better response? Thank you.
That's what I've been just saying.
Yep.
And, one of our guys that's in our elder training right now pulled me aside several years ago, and I cut myself down after a message, and he just politely said, "Hey, don't do that. Like, you don't need to do that." And that was a learning moment for me. And that's what's cool about, all of these topics is if you take the posture of a learner and take the posture of the gospel continuing to transform you, you can have all of these things, and God's leading you to where He wants to take you. Mm-hmm. It's just every one of these is an opportunity to learn. So
I had a lot of people come up to me after our first service in Clay County this week and tell me how good of a job I did. And it was at that moment that we realized I had only preached about 17 minutes. So they didn't necessarily like the
reason was
the countdown timer didn't get changed.
The clock in the back
Easter
was wrong. It told him he was done.
And I definitely freaked out.
That's when you just lean into it,
I just went right to the closing, and people were like, "That was such a great message." And I was like, I don't know if you actually heard it or not, but I think you liked the shortness of the message rather than the actual topic. But yeah, just saying thank you.
It's hard.
Somebody said to me the other day, I thought you were retiring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I've got years left. We said a year ago now we're switching roles in 5 years, and they're like, "Oh,
thank you."
They were like, "Oh, 4 more years."
Somebody asked me
4 more years. 4 more.
Somebody asked me about it, and they were like, "How's that going?" I was like, "Great, I think." Do you hear something I don't have? And they're like, "No, you guys just make it look so easy and seamless." And I was like, I don't think it needs to be something that's, if it's done right, it just happens and nobody even knows it.
Back to the sermon complimenting thing.
Thank you.
I heard about there's in the old days, everybody used to go by the preacher and you had to shake hands to get out of the building.
Yeah.
Glad we don't do that. That's gross. But
it's a lot of hands.
It's gross. But the good sermon, and the preacher didn't want to take the credit, so he started saying, "That's all God. It's all God." Some guy comes out and says, "That was a really good sermon today. It was all God." And the guy goes, "It wasn't that good." Okay, and on that,
Thank you.
wrapping up this insightful discussion on pride.
Stop it.
Thanks for joining us.